Right now, take your shoes off. Seriously, feel the floor beneath your feet for just a second. Maybe it's smooth wood, maybe it's cold tile, maybe it's soft carpet that has never known a single sharp stone in its life. Now imagine walking like that tomorrow, not around your house, across 20 miles of rough ground, over broken rocks, through thorn bushes, across burning sand, into freezing streams, day after day, year after year. No sneakers, no boots, no sandals, nothing. It sounds impossible. Your feet would bleed. Every step would hurt. You'd probably make it a few hundred meters before desperately looking for something to wrap around them. And yet every person who has ever lived is descended from people who did exactly that. For almost all of human history, shoes simply did not exist. Not because our ancestors were too primitive to invent them, not because nobody had thought of the idea, but because for hundreds of thousands of years they didn't actually need them. That sounds absurd. Modern advertisements tell us our feet require expensive support systems, cushioned soles, arch stabilization, heel protection, waterproof membranes, breathable fabrics, shock absorption, and enough technology to launch a satellite. Ancient humans had skin, just skin, and somehow they crossed Africa. They walked into Europe, they reached Australia. Eventually they crossed into the Americas. Millions of miles were walked before the first proper shoe ever appeared. So what did they know that we've forgotten? Because the story isn't really about shoes. It's about one of the greatest engineering projects evolution ever completed, your feet. Most people think the human hand is our greatest tool. It's impressive. Opposable thumbs changed history. But without feet, none of it would have mattered. Your foot contains 26 bones, 33 joints, more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Nearly 1/4 of every bone in your body is packed below your ankles. That isn't an accident. Evolution spent millions of years redesigning the human foot into something unlike almost anything else in nature. Chimpanzees have feet that behave almost like hands. They can grip branches. They climb beautifully. But ask one to walk 20 miles across open country every day and it would struggle. Humans made the opposite trade. We sacrificed climbing. In return, we became the greatest long-distance walkers the planet has ever produced. Look underneath your foot. That curve running along the inside isn't just there to make buying shoes more complicated. It's an enormous spring. Every step stores energy. Every push forward releases it. Instead of fighting gravity, your body recycles it. Scientists estimate this elastic system saves remarkable amounts of energy over long distances. Now multiply that by 20,000 steps, then by every day, then by an entire lifetime. Suddenly walking becomes incredibly efficient. Our ancestors weren't surviving despite walking everywhere. They were surviving because they could. But there was still one obvious problem. The ground hurts. Or at least it hurts you. Step onto gravel barefoot today and most people begin hopping around within seconds. The first assumption is that ancient humans simply tolerated pain better. That's only partially true. The real answer is much stranger. Your ancestors didn't have different feet. They had different skin. Modern people often think of calluses as something ugly, something to scrape off, something a pedicure promises to eliminate. But from an evolutionary perspective, a callus is one of nature's greatest inventions. It is armor that grows exactly where you need it. Unlike leather, it repairs itself. Unlike rubber, it adapts. Unlike shoes, it never falls apart. Researchers studying habitually barefoot communities discovered something surprising. Their feet developed thick protective calluses that shield them from sharp ground. But those calluses don't numb sensation. They can still feel tiny changes in texture. They still sense balance. They still detect pressure. That matters enormously. Every tiny pebble beneath your foot tells your brain something. How slippery the ground is. Whether you're stepping onto rock, mud, roots, loose gravel, your nervous system constantly adjusts without you realizing it. Modern shoes protect us wonderfully, but they also interrupt much of that conversation. It's a little like wearing thick gloves all day. Your hands stay safe, but they stop feeling the world properly. Ancient humans never lost that feedback. Every step was information. Every surface taught them something. Which brings us to another question. If shoes weren't necessary, why did they eventually appear? Most people imagine the first shoes being invented because somebody finally became tired of sore feet. History rarely works that neatly. For most of our existence, humans remained in relatively warm environments. East Africa, parts of the Middle East, regions where freezing temperatures weren't the everyday problem they later became. Bare feet worked, until humans started leaving. Around 70,000 years ago, modern humans began spreading into dramatically different climates. Forests, mountains, Ice Age Europe. Suddenly the problem wasn't sharp rocks. It was frostbite. Skin can survive incredible punishment. It cannot negotiate with frozen ground. Imagine standing barefoot on snow for hours. The issue isn't discomfort, it's tissue dying. Blood vessels constrict, heat disappears, toes become numb, then damaged, eventually permanently. No amount of evolutionary toughness solves physics. Cold changes everything. Interestingly, archaeologists almost never find ancient shoes. Leather rots, plant fibers disappear, animal hides decay. Unlike stone tools, footwear rarely survives tens of thousands of years. So how do scientists know when humans probably started wearing shoes? The answer comes from an unexpected place: our own skeletons. Around 2008, researchers studying ancient human foot bones noticed something fascinating. The smallest toes began changing. People who regularly walk barefoot grip the ground with every step. Their toes remain stronger, more robust, more active. But once shoes begin doing some of that work, those tiny bones experience less stress. Over generations, subtle anatomical differences begin appearing. It's like reading invisible footprints left inside the skeleton itself. The evidence suggests regular footwear became much more common around 40,000 years ago. Think about that timeline. Modern humans had already existed for over 200,000 years. We had cave art, complex language, music, long-distance trade, sophisticated hunting strategies. And yet for most of that time, people still walked barefoot. Shoes arrived surprisingly late, which tells us something important. Shoes weren't one of humanity's first great inventions. They became necessary only after humans started pushing beyond the environments our bodies had originally evolved to master. But cold wasn't the only reason. There was another change happening at exactly the same time, one that quietly transformed human life forever. Because once humans stopped walking only through wilderness, they began walking through something far more dangerous: the world they built themselves. Because eventually, humans built roads, not the smooth asphalt beneath your car, not the sidewalks outside your house. The first roads were villages, then farms, then cities. For hundreds of thousands of years, your feet mostly met natural ground: grass, mud, sand, forest soil. These surfaces actually give a little under your weight. They're surprisingly forgiving. But permanent settlements changed the equation. Stone floors, broken pottery, construction debris, wooden platforms, sharp waste. The ground humans created was often harsher than the one nature had made. Agriculture also meant something else. People weren't constantly moving anymore. Hunter-gatherers rarely stayed in one place long enough for waste to pile up. Farmers did. Animals lived nearby. People dumped refuse close to their homes. Parasites multiplied. Infections spread more easily. Suddenly, covering your feet wasn't only about comfort. It became another barrier between your body and an increasingly unhealthy environment. Shoes slowly shifted from optional equipment into everyday protection. But something even stranger happened. The moment humans started wearing shoes regularly, shoes stopped being just tools. They became messages. Look throughout history, and you'll notice an odd pattern. Almost every civilization cared deeply about footwear. Ancient Egyptians often walked barefoot indoors, but finely crafted sandals became symbols of status. Roman soldiers marched across Europe wearing carefully designed leather boots that helped build one of history's largest empires. In medieval Europe, certain styles of shoes were reserved only for nobles. Some were so impractical they could barely be walked in. Think about that. The very object invented to help people walk eventually became something people wore to prove they didn't have to. The richer you became, the less practical your shoes often looked. It sounds ridiculous, but humans have always communicated through appearance. A feather, a necklace, a tattoo, a hairstyle, a shoe. None of these are simply objects. They're signals. Long before you speak, people begin judging you. Your ancestors understood this instinctively. Eventually, footwear became another language. Leather meant one thing, wood another, silk another, color another, decoration another. The foot that once touched the earth directly was now wrapped in culture. Yet despite thousands of years of wearing shoes, something interesting refuses to disappear. Children, watch a young child at a beach, or in a garden, or running across grass. One of the first things many of them do is remove their shoes. Nobody teaches them that. It just feels better. Scientists studying barefoot movement have noticed that people naturally adjust the way they walk when shoes come off. The stride shortens, the foot lands differently. The ankle becomes more active. Dozens of tiny muscles begin working again. Your body remembers, not consciously, but biologically. Those ancient movement patterns never completely disappeared. They're still waiting underneath modern habits. Of course, this doesn't mean everyone should throw their shoes away tomorrow. Modern environments are nothing like prehistoric landscapes: glass, metal, concrete, industrial chemicals, hot pavement. None of these shaped human evolution. Shoes protect us from dangers our ancestors never faced. Medicine also allows people with certain foot conditions to benefit enormously from supportive footwear. The point isn't that shoes are bad. The point is that our relationship with them is surprisingly new. If all of human history were compressed into a single year, shoes would appear only during the final few days. For almost everything that made us human, they weren't there. That realization changes another assumption. People often imagine prehistoric humans constantly suffering, cold, hungry, injured, barefoot. But evolution doesn't usually leave obvious survival problems unsolved for hundreds of thousands of years. If feet had truly been incapable of handling natural terrain, humanity would never have left Africa. Our ancestors crossed deserts, climbed mountains, followed rivers, tracked migrating animals across entire continents, generation after generation. Not because they ignored pain, because their bodies had already adapted to the challenge. In many ways, your feet are still the same remarkable machines. They're simply living different lives. Most of us spend our days sitting, driving, standing on perfectly flat floors. Walking across smooth concrete, our feet rarely need to balance on uneven ground, rarely climb, rarely grip, rarely adapt. They're asked to do less than almost any other time in human history. And like every part of the body, unused abilities slowly fade. That's why uneven trails often feel strangely exhausting today. Not because humans forgot how to walk, because modern life rarely asks us to. There's another fascinating detail. Ancient footprints occasionally survive in mud that later hardened into stone. Some of them are astonishing. At White Sands National Park in New Mexico, fossilized footprints reveal humans walking alongside mammoths and giant ground sloths thousands of years ago. Elsewhere, footprints preserved in volcanic ash show entire families traveling together, adults, children, sometimes carrying infants. These aren't just footprints, they're moments. Frozen forever. Someone hurried, someone stopped, someone changed direction, someone walked beside another person. The ground remembered long after the people disappeared. And every one of those footprints shares something remarkable. No tread pattern, no stitched leather, no rubber sole, only the shape of a human foot, exactly like yours. When you look down today, it's easy to think your shoes define how you move. For your ancestors, movement began much earlier than that. It began with skin, with muscles, with tendons stretching like springs beneath every step, with toes spreading naturally across uneven ground, with millions of years of evolution quietly solving problems long before inventors ever thought about footwear. Perhaps that's the strangest part of this entire story. Shoes are one of humanity's greatest inventions. They've allowed us to explore frozen landscapes, climb dangerous mountains, survive hostile climates, and protect ourselves from hazards evolution never anticipated. But they also hide something. Every morning, before your feet disappear inside leather, rubber, foam, or fabric, you're looking at one of the oldest technologies your species has ever possessed. Not something humans built, something nature built, something refined across millions of years by countless ancestors who survived because every step mattered. The next time you untie your shoes after a long day, pause for a moment. Look at your feet, those arches, those toes, those calluses, however small they may be. They are living fossils, a record of journeys so long that no map can contain them. Your shoes may be modern, but the feet inside them belong to a traveler whose story began hundreds of thousands of years before the first sandal was ever tied. And in a quiet way, every step you take today is another step in the same journey that began when one of your distant ancestors placed a bare foot onto the African earth and simply kept walking.